This tutorial will show you how to start your resume reel if you want to include an animated background and an image. So you have to always think about where your project is going, and that's going to dictate your sequence settings. So I'm going to go File, New Sequence, and since I know I want this to go on the internet, I'm going to use the YouTube setting. So I know that it's progressive versus interlaced, and that I do want it 1920 by 1080. So I'm going to go ahead and I can call it what I want to call it down here. If I want to call it midterm resume reel, so that way I know this is going to be able to be used on the internet because it is progressive. So now I have my new sequence, and so I'm going to go and import media into my project. I have an image. You always want to make sure that you think about the image. You don't want it to be an image where somebody's cropped out or you're cropped out of an image. You want it to be a professional looking photo. So what I recommend is one day when you're in studio, have somebody come and take a bust shot or head and shoulder shot. So that way you can have something to put in your resume reel. Now you don't need to do this if you just want to be a photographer or editor. This is more for anchors and reporters. Not everyone does this, but quite a few people will use an image and a background with text. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in Ron, and I'm going to put him on the V2 layer because I'm going to have the animated background behind him. So now I'm going to go and grab an animated background. Let's check out and see which colors. So I have a blue one and I have a red one. Since this is kind of more Mississippi State, I'm going to go ahead and use the background. I don't need the audio on this. You want this for probably about maybe 10 seconds. So they can read everything 5 to 10 seconds so they can read everything on there. I try to read through it at least 2 or 3 times to make sure they can read it and then move on. So since I want it all to be at the same time, I do want to make sure that the image and the background are the same length on the timeline. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the Ron Burgundy image smaller and move it off to the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on Ron Burgundy, and then I'm going to go to my Effects Control tab. I'm going to make sure I see the motion, and then I am going to go to the Effects Viewer up here so I can see what I'm doing. And then I'm going to adjust the scale and make it smaller. You don't want it probably to take up the whole up and down. You can if you want, but I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And then positioning left and right will allow you to go X and Y. So if I go this way, it'll go left. So I'm going to pull it left so I have space for my text. And then I would input text here. I would probably do a left alignment. It's a stronger alignment than center, and especially if you have an image here, center alignment would look kind of odd. I can go ahead and pull it over a little bit more if I want. If you wanted to, you could make it, full screen. It's up to you. It's your choice. Just make sure it looks aesthetically pleasing. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to editing, and I am going to add a text to it. So if we want to add a title, we can go up to the title menu, new title. I'm going to do still. I'm not going to have it crawl. So I'm going to go default still, and I'm going to call it maybe my title. So I know that it's going to be my information, my title. You're going to want to pick a font that stands out against this background. You don't want it to be something like this. It's kind of cheesy looking. So make sure it's a nice solid font that doesn't have too many weird wacky stuff like here or here. Those would not look very professional. So I'm probably going to use white since white would stand out against this background easier. So I'm going to get the regular text tool. I'm going to draw a rectangle, and then I'm going to start typing. I do want left alignment here. I recommend making your name stand out more so that way they see it. So I'm going to highlight it, and we're going to maybe make it a little bit smaller so it fits all on one line. If I need it to go bigger, I can always draw my box a little bit bigger, so that way I have more room to go to a larger font size. Everything you put in the box is going to be the same font size. If you want to have a different font size, you could do like one for your name, one for your title and your contact information. To me, it looks like the font is too close together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the font size. So I'm going to go maybe down to 86, and then I'm going to adjust the tracking. Tracking is the space between each letter. This is kerning. Tracking is over here. And then that'll increase the space between each letter to make it look like there's more space between it. So then it's easier to read the letters. You don't always have to do this, but sometimes with certain fonts, you need to adjust the tracking so that way it's easier to see the letters. Then I would go down and I would put what my title is. So if you're a reporter and anchor, I would not make them all caps. Looks like this font does only do all caps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight it and I'm going to use this font. You can see here again the letters are pretty close together, so I'm going to highlight them and adjust the tracking so you can see my name easier. Down here I'm going to say reporter and anchor. Then you can put your contact information, telephone number. You don't need to put telephone number, you can just put your actual telephone number there and email address. If you want to put like information about where they can go to your YouTube channel, you can put your YouTube channel address on there as well. But the main basics that you have to have for your resume reel for me is you obviously have to have, everyone has to have their name, their title, and their contact information at the beginning of their resume reel. If you want to add an image as a reporter and anchor, you can. You don't have to. I'm probably going to line the text up at the top, or if I wanted to, I could bring it down into the center, but it's left aligned, so it's a stronger alignment and it works better with the image. Then I can close it and let go, and then all I have to do is go to my project and find my title, which will be in my project tab, my title. I want it to go the same length as Ron and the background, and now you have an animated background with your image on it. Now say you think the background is too bright or too dark, what you can do is you can actually add another layer. So if I add another layer, move everything up, what you can do is then you can add a shape down here on the bottom. So that would be in my titles as well. So I can go to title, default still, I can say box, and then you'll see you have a box tool here, and I could drag a box tool here, and if I thought the background was too dark, I could put a white box and then I could lower the opacity. So then maybe the background and the image pop a little more, and I can say okay. Then if I liked it, I could bring the box in here, and you can see now it's a little bit lighter. I would probably maybe adjust it lighter because I don't like the way that looks. And then it's, pops off the page a little bit more. Sometimes people will do this with something that's really dark. I personally like it without it, so I'm going to just bring everything back down so it's easier for me to see. And now you actually have the beginning of your resume reel. So you always want to let them know who you are and what you are. If I was going to advertise myself as a reporter and anchor, I might say MMJ in there as well, because that's a multimedia journalist, which is where this industry is at this point. We don't just need a reporter. We don't just need a photographer. We need a person who can report, produce, and shoot and edit all their own work. So that's why it's important for you to be aware of that and put MMJ if you're a person who is a photographer and editor and a person who can produce your own packages. So I really need to see that in there. So again, everybody has to have their name, their title, their contact information, a telephone number, and an email address at the beginning of your resume reel.